Document. Part 4 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question and Paid for It in Explosions. The world was unraveling. The Varnik's third question, would you destroy yourselves if given the chance, had struck a nerve deeper than anyone expected. It wasn't just a riddle or a test. It was a mirror, reflecting humanity's darkest fears and failures back at itself. Everywhere Rachel Monroe looked, she saw cracks widening not just between nations, but within communities, families, and even individuals. People were turning on each other, their anger and fear boiling over into violence. Rachel sat in her apartment, staring blankly at the news playing on her laptop. Cities burned. Nations accused one another of conspiring with the aliens. Small wars erupted in regions already destabilized by poverty and political strife. The Varnik's ship loomed, silently above the Pacific, its glowing surface pulsing faintly as if mocking Earth's inability to unite. She felt powerless, like a tiny speck caught in the gears of something far greater than herself. Daniel Harper called her late that night, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Rachel, we're running out of time," he said. "I've been analyzing. Those energy spikes near the ship, they're accelerating. Whatever they're building is close to completion." Rachel leaned forward, gripping the phone tightly. "What do you think it is? A weapon?" "Could be," Daniel replied. "Or maybe some kind of judgment mechanism. Something that decides whether we live or die based on our actions." Rachel closed her eyes, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "Then we need to act fast. If we can prove we're not beyond saving, maybe they'll reconsider." "But how?" Daniel asked. "Every move we make seems to make things worse." Rachel hesitated, then spoke firmly. "We focus on what we know. You keep studying the ship's energy patterns. I'll dig deeper into their questions. There has to be a pattern, a clue we're missing." Meanwhile, General Stephen Hayes paced the command center of his military base, frustration etched into every line of his face. His team had intercepted communications, suggesting rogue governments were planning coordinated attacks against perceived enemies under the assumption that the Varnik would intervene. It was madness chaos fueled by paranoia and desperation. Lieutenant Linda Carter approached him cautiously, holding a tablet displaying updated intel. "Sir, we've identified several targets where these strikes are likely to occur. If we don't stop them, it could escalate into full-blown war." Hayes clenched his fists. "And what do you suggest we do?" "March in and arrest world leaders. We don't have the authority or the manpower to prevent this." Carter hesitated before speaking. "We don't need to stop them directly. What if we use their fear against them? Leak false information about the Varnik siding with neutral parties. Make them hesitate." Hayes considered this, his sharp eyes narrowing. "It's risky, but it might buy us some time." He nodded curtly. "Do it." As the military scrambled to implement Carter's plan, Emily Dawson covered the growing unrest in New York City. Crowds gathered in Times Square, shouting slogans and waving signs. Some demanded peace talks with the Varnik, while others called for immediate retaliation. Arguments broke out frequently, and police struggled to maintain order. Emily stood on the sidelines, filming the chaos, when she noticed something: a group of people standing quietly amid the turmoil, holding banners with cryptic messages like "Forgiveness is strength and unity through understanding." Curious, Emily approached them. "Who are you?" she asked, lowering her camera. A young woman with short brown hair smiled gently. "We're part of a movement. We believe the Varnik aren't here to harm us. They're here to teach us." Emily frowned. "Teach us what?" "How to fight each other better." The woman shook her head. "No. To face our flaws. To choose who we want to be." Her words lingered in Emily's mind long after she left the square. Could it be true? Were the Varnik testing humanity's capacity for growth rather than destruction? She decided to investigate further, interviewing members of the group and researching their philosophy. Their message was simple yet profound. Instead of resisting the aliens' questions, humanity should embrace them as an opportunity for self-reflection. Back in Chicago, Rachel pored over historical records, searching for parallels between the Varnik's questions and past human crises. She focused on the Cold War era, when nuclear tensions brought the world to the brink of annihilation. Leaders at the time had faced similar dilemmas: how to resolve conflicts without resorting to devastation. Rachel found transcripts of speeches and documents detailing moments when diplomacy triumphed over aggression. "This is it," she whispered to herself, scribbling notes furiously. "The Varnak are recreating history, testing whether we've learned from our mistakes." She called Daniel immediately. "I think I figured it out," she said excitedly. "Their questions aren't random. They're designed to mimic humanity's most dangerous tendencies: division, conflict, self-destruction. They want to see if we can rise above them." Daniel sounded skeptical. "Even if you're right, knowing their intent doesn't solve our problem. How do we convince them we're worth saving?" Rachel paused, thinking carefully. "By showing them we're capable of change, not just through words, but through action. We need a global gesture, a symbolic act of unity." Daniel sighed. "Easier said than done. With everything falling apart, how do we pull that off?" Rachel didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing. If humanity didn't try, the outcome would be catastrophic. Across the globe, the Varnak's presence continued to spark both hope and despair. In Tokyo, activists organized candlelight vigils calling for peace. In London, scientists worked around the clock to decode the aliens' technology. In rural villages, elders gathered to share stories of resilience and forgiveness. Humanity was fractured. Yes, but glimmers of cooperation still existed. General Hayes monitored the situation closely, his instincts telling him the aliens were preparing for something monumental. Reconnaissance missions revealed strange structures forming beneath the ship, glowing faintly in the ocean depths. Energy readings spiked erratically, causing equipment malfunctions and bizarre weather patterns. "They're up to something," Hayes muttered during a briefing. "And whatever it is, it's happening soon." Lieutenant Carter nodded grimly. "Should we prepare for evacuation protocols?" "No," Hayes replied sharply. "If the Varnak wanted to wipe us out, they'd have done it already. This is different, more calculated." As the days passed, Rachel and Daniel worked tirelessly to piece together a plan. They reached out to trusted ally scientists, philosophers, even spiritual leaders, hoping to rally support for a unified response. Slowly, a coalition began to form. People from all walks of life came together, united by a shared belief that humanity's survival depended on proving its worth. But time was running out. The Varnak ship emitted a low hum that resonated across continents, sending shivers down spines worldwide. Kelther's voice returned once more, colder and more commanding than ever. "Your answers," he announced, "have spoken louder than your words. Prepare yourselves." For a moment, there was silence. Then the ground trembled as the ship unleashed a burst of energy that lit up the sky. Panic spread like wildfire as people braced for the worst. Rachel grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "Whatever happens next, we can't give up. Not now." Daniel took a deep breath. "Agreed. Let's show them what we're made of." End of document. *** document. Part 1 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question and Paid for It in Explosions. ***. The sky above Earth was calm that morning, painted with soft hues of orange and pink as the sun rose over the horizon. People around the world went about their usual routines, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. In cities like New York, Tokyo, and London, streets buzzed with activity. Cars honked, coffee shops filled with chatter, and children laughed on their way to school. But then, something extraordinary happened. High above the atmosphere, a massive object descended silently, its shadow stretching across continents. The object wasn't just big, it was enormous, larger than any skyscraper humanity had ever built. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow, reflecting sunlight in colors no human eye could fully comprehend. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if it wanted to be seen, and seen it was, within minutes. News channels around the globe interrupted regular programming to cover what they called the arrival. Social media exploded with videos, photos, and wild theories. Some thought it was a meteor, others believed it was a secret government project gone wrong. But when the craft finally came to a halt above the Pacific Ocean, hovering motionless miles above the water, everyone knew one thing for certain. This was no natural phenomenon. The first sign of life or rather intelligence came shortly after. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed not through speakers, but directly into the minds of billions. It wasn't painful or invasive. Instead, it felt like a gentle whisper carried by the wind. The message was simple, yet profound. We are the Varnock. We come seeking knowledge. Rachel Monroe sat in her small apartment in Chicago, staring at her laptop screen. As a linguist who specialized in decoding ancient languages, she had spent years studying how different cultures communicated. Now, faced with an alien species speaking directly into her mind, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. She grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel Harper, a physicist she had worked with on previous projects involving unexplained phenomena. "Did you hear that?" Rachel asked, without waiting for him to say hello. "I did," Daniel replied, his voice tinged with awe. "This is unreal." "Do you think it's real? It's not some mass hallucination. It's real," Rachel said firmly. "Whatever this is, it's intelligent, and it wants something from us." Double quotes. Meanwhile, governments scrambled to respond. Military bases went on high alert, satellites were repositioned, and emergency meetings were held in secret bunkers. Those called to action was General Stephen Hayes, a grizzled veteran known for his strategic mind and unwavering resolve. He stood in a dimly lit room surrounded by maps, screens, and anxious aides. On one monitor, the alien ship loomed large, its presence undeniable. "What do we know so far?" Hayes barked, his eyes scanning the room. "Not much." "Sir," replied Lieutenant Linda Carter, a young officer tasked with gathering intel, "their language bypasses our technology entirely. No radio waves, no digital signals, just thoughts." Hayes frowned. "Thoughts can be manipulated. Are we sure this isn't some kind of psychological warfare?" Before anyone could answer, another announcement came from the Varnock. This time, their leader, a towering insectoid figure with glowing blue eyes, appeared on every screen worldwide. His name, he said, was Kelthar, though his appearance was unsettling. His tone remained calm and measured. "We seek to understand your species," Kelthar continued. "Your strengths, your weaknesses, your essence. To achieve this, we will ask questions, answer them truthfully, and we shall depart in peace." The room fell silent except for the hum of computers. Hayes leaned forward, his jaw tightening. "Questions," he muttered under his breath. "Okay, questions." Back in Chicago, Rachel and Daniel watched the broadcast together via video call. Rachel adjusted her glasses nervously. "This feels like a test," she said, "but I don't trust them." Daniel nodded. "Neither do I, but we don't have a choice. If they're watching everything and, I mean everything, then lying won't help. We need to figure out what they really want." As the day wore on, the initial shock began to wear off, replaced by curiosity and fear. Crowds gathered in public squares, holding signs that read "Welcome aliens" and "Go home." Conspiracy theorists took to YouTube, claiming the Varnock. "We're here to harvest humans for food or experiments." Religious leaders preached sermons about divine judgment, while scientists debated whether the aliens were truly benevolent. In Washington, D.C., Rachel and Daniel were summoned to join a panel of experts assembled to analyze the situation. The group included biologists, engineers, philosophers, and even a few psychologists. Each member brought their own perspective, but none could agree on how to proceed. "They're testing us," argued Dr. Alan Pierce, a sociologist. "Every question they ask will reveal more about our society than we might intend." "What happens if we fail their test?" asked Emily Dawson, a journalist covering the event. Her sharp green eyes darted between the panel members. "Do they leave? Or do they decide we're not worth keeping around?" Rachel raised her hand hesitantly. "Maybe the key isn't just answering their questions. Maybe it's understanding why they're asking them in the first place." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Everyone turned to look at her, some nodding thoughtfully, others skeptical. But before anyone could respond, the Varnak spoke again. "Our first question," Kelthor announced, his voice reverberating across the planet. "What motivates your species?" For a moment, there was silence. Then chaos erupted. Phones lit up with notifications as people everywhere rushed to share their thoughts. Politicians gave speeches, celebrities posted videos, and ordinary citizens weighed in on forums and social media platforms. Answers ranged from survival and love to greed and power. Philosophers debated free will versus instinct, while economists pointed to money as the ultimate driver. Rachel watched the frenzy unfold with growing unease. "This is exactly what they wanted," she murmured to Daniel. "To see how we react, how divided we are." Daniel leaned closer to his laptop camera. "Or maybe they're trying to find our weak spots, divide and conquer," as ours turned. In today's, patterns began to emerge. Certain regions emphasized community and cooperation, while others highlighted individualism and competition. The Varnak observed silently, their ship unmoving above the Pacific. Occasionally, faint pulses of light rippled across its surface. It's almost like it was breathing. General Hayes monitored the situation closely, his instincts screaming that something was off. He ordered reconnaissance flights near the ship, though none dared approach too closely. Pilots reported strange sensations, dizziness, nauseous. If the very air around the vessel resisted intrusion, this isn't just about questions, Hayes told his team during a late-night briefing. They're learning, adapting, preparing. For something, but preparing for what? That question haunted everyone involved. For now, all humanity could do was wait, and hope that the next question wouldn't push them closer to disaster. End of document. *** document. Part 2 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question and Paid for It in Explosions. *** The days following the Varnak's first question were unlike anything Earth had ever experienced. Humanity was buzzing with energy, caught between excitement and dread. The aliens' inquiry, "What motivates your species?" It sparked a global conversation that no one could ignore. From classrooms to boardrooms, from street corners to government chambers, people debated endlessly. But beneath the surface of this collective reflection, cracks began to form. Rachel Monroe found herself glued to her laptop, scrolling through countless responses to the Varnak's question. Social media feeds were flooded with posts, memes, and essays attempting to define what drove humanity. Some argued that love and connection were at the core of human existence. Others claimed it was ambition, survival, or even greed. Rachel noticed something troubling. The more people talked, the angrier some became. Arguments erupted online. Friendships fractured. Entire communities seemed to split along ideological lines. "It's like they're poking at a wound," Rachel muttered to Daniel Harper over a video call. "Every answer just uncovers another divide." Daniel nodded, his face illuminated by the glow of his computer screen. Maybe that's the point. They didn't ask us to agree, they asked us to reveal ourselves. We're doing exactly that. Meanwhile, General Stephen Hayes sat in a secure military bunker, watching live streams of protests breaking out across the globe. In Paris, crowds clashed over whether humanity was inherently good or evil. In Mumbai, debates turned violent, as groups accused each other of misrepresenting their culture. Even in small towns, tensions simmered. Hayes clenched his fists as he listened to reports of vandalism and arrests. "This isn't coincidence," he growled, addressing his team. "These aliens are playing us like instruments." Every response feeds into their plan. Lieutenant Linda Carter, seated nearby, frowned. But what is their plan? Are they gathering data? Testing our limits? Hayes shook his head. "I don't know yet. But I do know one thing: we can't let them keep pushing buttons. We need answers before they ask their next question." Back in Washington, D.C., the panel of experts convened again to analyze the growing unrest. Dr. Alan Pierce, the sociologist, stood at the front of the room, pointing to graphs showing spikes in conflict-related incidents since the Varnak's arrival. "Look at this," he said, tapping the screen. Every time someone shares an opinion, others react not just with agreement, but with hostility. Aliens aren't just asking questions. They're amplifying division. Emily Dawson, the journalist, raised her hand. So you're saying they're exploiting our weaknesses, turning us against each other? Pierce hesitated. Not necessarily. Maybe they're simply observing how we handle disagreement. Either way, it's working. People are losing trust in each other. Rachel leaned forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. We need to stop reacting emotionally. If we can find a unified message, one that represents all of humanity, we might stand a chance. Easier said than done. The task of crafting such a message proved nearly impossible. Governments argued over who should speak for Earth. Religious leaders insisted morality must be emphasized. While scientists pushed for rationality, activists demanded acknowledgement of social injustices, and corporations wanted to highlight innovation. By the time the Varnock finally transmitted their second question, humanity was more divided than ever. Our second question, Kelther announced, his voice resonating once again in minds around the world. How do you resolve conflict? The reaction was immediate and explosive. Debates escalated into shouting matches. Peaceful demonstrations devolved into riots. In New York City, Emily Dawson covered a protest where two factions clashed violently over differing interpretations of the question. One side argued that dialogue and compromise were key, while the other insisted force was sometimes necessary. As tear gas filled the air and police tried to restore order, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. They're tearing us apart, she whispered into her recorder. One question at a time? Rachel watched the chaos unfold on her screen, her heart sinking. She picked up her phone and dialed Daniel. This is worse than I thought, she said when he answered. They're not just observing, they're influencing, pushing us toward extremes. Daniel sighed. It's like they're conducting an experiment. Seeing how far we'll go before we implode? He wasn't wrong. Across the planet, conflicts intensified. In Africa, long-standing rivalries flared up as tribes interpreted the question differently. In Asia, nations exchanged harsh words over historical grievances. Even within families, arguments broke out over how best to answer. The Varnock remained silent, their ship hovering ominously above the Pacific, as if waiting for the storm to reach its peak. General Hayes grew increasingly restless. He ordered reconnaissance missions to gather more information about the alien vessel. Pilots reported strange phenomena near the craft: electromagnetic interference, temperature fluctuations, and bizarre visual distortions. One pilot described seeing flashes of light emanating from the ship's surface, almost like pulses of energy. It's alive, Hayes muttered to himself, staring at footage from the flights. Or at least, it's interacting with its environment. Lieutenant Carter approached him cautiously. Sir, we've detected unusual activity near the equator. Energy readings suggest something's building. What kind of something? Hayes snapped. We don't know yet, but it's big. Hayes rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Whatever the Varnock were planning, it couldn't be good. He needed to act, but how? Attacking the ship would risk retaliation, possibly catastrophic? Ignoring it meant allowing the situation to spiral further out of control. For now, all he could do was prepare for the worst. As the days passed, Rachel and Daniel worked tirelessly to uncover patterns in the Varnock's behavior. They noticed subtle inconsistencies in how the aliens responded to human answers. Sometimes, Kelthar seemed pleased. Other times, his tone carried an edge of disappointment. It was as if the Varnock were grading humanity's performance, deciding whether they passed or failed some invisible test. Rachel spent hours poring over transcripts of Kelthar's transmissions, searching for hidden meanings. Listen to this, she said to Daniel one evening, pointing to a line in the text. Your actions speak louder than your words. What does that mean? Daniel squinted at the screen. Maybe they're not just listening to what we say. Watching what we do? A cold realization washed over Rachel. Of course. That's why the conflicts are escalating. Our actions are answering their questions for them. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Where are you going? Daniel called after her, to warn Hayes. If the Varnock are judging us based on our behavior, then every riot, every fight, every act of violence is making things worse. We have to stop this before it's too late. By the time Rachel reached the military base, tensions were at an all-time high. Hayes listened intently as she explained her theory, his expression grim. You're saying they're using our own actions against us, he asked. Rachel nodded. Exactly. They're learning from us, but not in the way we hoped. Every mistake we make is teaching them that we're dangerous, unpredictable, maybe even unworthy of coexistence. Hayes slammed his fist on the table. We need to change the narrative. Fast. But changing the narrative proved easier said than done. Despite pleas from world leaders and calls for unity, the divisions only deepened. In London, a massive rally turned deadly when opposing groups clashed over the meaning of peace. Tokyo, hackers disrupted power grids, claiming the Varnock were testing humanity's resilience. Fires burned in cities and fear spread like wildfire. Through it all, the Varnock remained eerily silent, their glowing ship a constant reminder of their presence. Kelther did not intervene, nor did he offer guidance, simply waited, watching as humanity tore itself apart. Rachel returned home late one night, exhausted and disheartened. She stared out her window at the darkened city skyline, wondering if there was any hope left. Then her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I think I found something, he said urgently. Energy readings near the ship, they're spiking. Whatever they're planning, it's coming soon. Rachel's stomach tightened. Maybe ours. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Then, we'd better get ready. Because if we don't figure this out, the next question might be the last one we ever hear. End of document. Document, part 3 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question, and paid for it in explosions. The world was on edge. The Varnock's second question, how do you resolve conflict, had plunged humanity into chaos, and the aliens showed no sign of leaving. Their massive ship remained suspended above the Pacific Ocean, its shimmering surface pulsing faintly as if alive. People everywhere were glued to their screens, waiting anxiously for what would come next. Some prayed for peace, while others braced for war. But one thing was certain, the Varnock weren't done with Earth yet. Rachel Monroe sat at her desk. Surrounded by stacks of papers and open tabs on her laptop, she had barely slept in days, her mind racing with theories about the aliens' intentions. Her conversation with Daniel replayed in her head like a broken record. If the Varnock were learning from humanity's actions, then every riot, every act of violence was feeding into their assessment. And based on how things were going, the verdict wouldn't be favorable. She glanced at her phone, which buzzed incessantly with updates from news outlets and messages from colleagues. One headline caught her eye. Third World War looming, global. Conflicts escalate amid alien presence. Rachel sighed and rubbed her temples. Humanity wasn't just failing the test, it was actively sabotaging itself. Across town, Daniel Harper was equally restless. He paced back and forth in his small apartment, staring at graphs and charts that displayed energy readings near the alien ship. The spikes Daniel had noticed earlier were growing more frequent and intense. Something big was brewing, and he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. I need to talk to Rachel, he muttered to himself, grabbing his coat. He needed another perspective, someone who could help him piece together the puzzle. Together they might stand a chance of understanding what the Varnock were planning. Meanwhile, General Stephen Hayes stood in the command center of a top-secret military base, his eyes fixed on a large monitor showing real-time data from reconnaissance missions. Pilots reported strange phenomena near the Varnock ship, electromagnetic storms, gravitational anomalies, and bursts of light that defied explanation. Lieutenant Linda Carter stood beside him, her face pale with concern. "Sir, we've detected unusual activity around the equator," she said, pointing to a cluster of red dots on the screen. "It's spreading." Hayes clenched his jaw. "Spread? Where?" "Everywhere," Carter replied grimly. "Whatever it is, it's moving outward, toward populated areas." Hayes turned to his team. Prepare all available units. We may not know what's coming, but we can't afford to be caught. Off guard. As military forces mobilized, the situation on the ground continued to deteriorate. Protests erupted in major cities, fueled by fear and frustration. In Paris, clashes between rival factions left streets littered with debris and blood. In Beijing, government officials imposed martial law after demonstrators stormed public buildings. Even in quieter regions, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Threatening to boil over at any moment, journalist Emily Dawson covered the escalating unrest. From New York City, where a massive rally had turned violent overnight, protesters argued over whether humanity should submit to the Varnak or fight back. Some carried signs reading "Peace through strength," while others chanted slogans about unity and resistance. Emily filmed the chaos, her hands trembling as she captured images of tear gas clouds and burning barricades. "They're using us against each other," she whispered to herself, lowering her camera. "Every argument, every fight, it's exactly what they want." Back in Chicago, Rachel and Daniel met at a quiet cafe to discuss their findings. They spoke in hushed tones, aware that even private conversations could attract unwanted attention. "The energy spikes are getting worse," Daniel explained, sliding a tablet across the table. "If my calculations are correct, whatever the Varnak are building is reaching critical mass." Rachel studied the data, her brow furrowed. "And you think it's tied to their next question?" "It has to be," Daniel replied. "Why else? Would they wait so long? They're preparing for something big?" Rachel nodded slowly. "We need to warn Hayes. If we don't act now, it might be too late." Before they could leave, Rachel's phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Look up." Confused, she glanced out the window and froze. The sky above the city was filled with streaks of light, moving in synchronized patterns. It was beautiful yet terrifying, like a cosmic dance unfolding overhead. "What the hell is that?" Daniel asked, following her gaze. "I don't know," Rachel whispered, "but I think it's a message." Within minutes, the lights coalesced into a single beam that shot straight into space. Then silence. The world seemed to hold its breath as everyone waited for what came next. Kelthar's voice returned, resonating in minds across the planet. "Your third question," he announced, his tone colder than before. "Would you destroy yourselves if given the chance?" The reaction was instantaneous. Panic swept through nations as people grappled with the implications of the question. Religious leaders declared it a moral dilemma. Philosophers debated free will versus fate, and conspiracy theorists claimed the Varnak were planning genocide. Social media exploded with arguments, memes, and desperate pleas for calm. In Washington, D.C., the panel of experts reconvened in a state of crisis. Dr. Alan Pierce slammed his fists on the table. "This isn't just a question, it's a threat. You're implying we're capable of self-destruction." Emily Dawson raised her hand hesitantly. "Maybe they're right. Look at everything happening right now. Riots, wars, environmental collapse. We're already destroying ourselves." Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "That's what they want us to believe. They're framing the question to make us doubt our own survival instinct." Listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Rachel finished speaking, he leaned forward. "So what do we do? How do we answer without playing into their hands?" Rachel hesitated. "We don't, at least not directly. We focus on proving them wrong. Show them we're capable of change." But implementing such a plan proved nearly impossible. Governments struggled to coordinate efforts, distrust lingering between nations. Military leaders clashed over strategies while civilians demanded answers no one could provide. As hours turned into days, the energy spikes near the Varnak ship grew more volatile, signaling that the aliens' patience was wearing thin. Daniel worked tirelessly to analyze the data, searching for a weakness in the Varnak's defenses. He discovered faint fluctuations in their energy field, suggesting the ship relied on some form of external power source. If humanity could disrupt that source, they might gain the upper hand. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Daniel told Rachel during another late-night meeting. "Cut off their power supply, and maybe, just maybe, we can force them to retreat." Rachel shook her head. Or provoke them into attacking. We can't risk guessing wrong. As the debate raged on, smaller-scale conflicts broke out across the globe. Rogue states launched preemptive strikes against perceived threats, believing the Varnak would side with aggressors. Chaos reigned, and hope began to fade. Rachel watched the news in despair, tears streaming down her face. Humanity was losing itself, piece by piece. She picked up her phone and dialed Daniel. "We have to try," she said softly. "Even if it's hopeless, we have to try." Daniel nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Then let's get to work, because if we don't figure this out, the next explosion won't just be metaphorical." End of document. *** document. Part 5 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question and Paid for It in Explosions. The burst of energy from the Varnak ship was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. A wave of light and sound swept across the globe, momentarily, blotting out the sun. Birds fell silent, animals scattered, and humans froze in awe or terror. The hum that followed vibrated through bones, a low-frequency pulse that seemed to echo in everyone's chest. For a moment, it felt as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Rachel Monroe stood on her apartment balcony, staring up at the sky. Her hands trembled as she clutched the railing, her mind racing to make sense of what was happening. Was this the end? Had humanity failed the test so completely that the Varnak had decided to destroy them? Or was this some kind of warning, a final chance to prove themselves? Daniel Harper called her moments later, his voice strained but determined. "Rachel, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her tone betrayed her fear. "Do you think that was?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "But it wasn't an attack. If they wanted to wipe us out, they could have done it instantly. This feels different." Rachel nodded even though he couldn't see her. "Different how?" "Like they're setting something up," Daniel said, "maybe preparing for their next move." As the initial shock wore off, people began reacting in unpredictable ways. Some interpreted the event as divine intervention, flooding churches, mosques, and temples to pray for salvation. Others saw it as confirmation of their worst fears that the aliens were about to unleash destruction, and took to the streets. In panic, riots erupted in cities worldwide, fueled by desperation and confusion. In New York City, journalist Emily Dawson covered the chaos unfolding in Times Square. Crowds surged back and forth, shouting conflicting messages. One group chanted, "We deserve forgiveness," while another yelled, "Fight back, show them we're strong." Police struggled to maintain order, firing tear gas into the crowd. As tensions escalated, Emily filmed the scene, her heart pounding as she wove through the chaos. "They're losing control," she whispered into her recorder. "If the Varnak wanted to see how we handle pressure, they're getting more than they bargained for." Back in Washington, D.C., General Stephen Hayes monitored the situation from his command center. Screens displayed live footage of protests, riots, and military movements around the world. His team worked frantically to analyze data from reconnaissance missions near the alien ship. Energy readings continued to spike erratically, suggesting the Varnak were powering up for something big. Lieutenant Linda Carter approached him, her face pale with worry. "Sir, we've detected seismic activity beneath the Pacific. Whatever they're building down there, it's massive." Hayes frowned. "Massive enough to destroy us?" Carter hesitated. "It's possible. But I don't think they're here to annihilate us outright. They've had plenty of chances to do that already." Hayes rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "And what are they waiting for?" Before anyone could answer, Rachel and Daniel's coalition made its first public move. Using social media and grassroots networks, they launched a global campaign called One Voice for Earth. The initiative encouraged people to set aside their differences and focus on unity. Messages spread rapidly online, urging individuals to perform small acts of kindness, helping strangers, planting trees, sharing resources, as symbols of hope and cooperation. At first, skepticism ran high. Many dismissed the campaign as naive or irrelevant given the gravity of the situation. But slowly, stories began to emerge. In Paris, rival protesters laid down their signs and shared food. In Tokyo, volunteers cleaned up debris left by earlier clashes. Even in war-torn regions, fleeting moments of peace broke through the violence. These gestures may have been small, but they carried a powerful message. Humanity was capable of change. Rachel watched these developments unfold with cautious optimism. She reached out to Daniel again, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's working. People are listening." "Everyone," Daniel reminded her. "But it's a start. Maybe the Varnak will notice." Meanwhile, Kelthar remained silent, his glowing eyes fixed on Earth from the safety of his ship. Observers noted subtle changes in the craft's appearance. Its surface now shimmered with intricate patterns, resembling circuits or veins. Some speculated it was adapting to Earth's environment. Others believed it was absorbing humanity's collective energy. In Chicago, Rachel and Daniel met in person to discuss their next steps, sat in a quiet cafe, surrounded by newspapers and laptops displaying maps of global unrest. Rachel leaned forward, her expression intense. "We need to take this further," she said. "Small actions won't be enough. We need something bigger, a symbolic gesture that proves we're serious about change." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Like what?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "A ceasefire. Global agreement, too. Stop all hostilities for just one day. No fighting, no arguing, no aggression, just peace." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You really think world leaders will agree to that?" "They might," Rachel replied, "if they understand it's our last chance." With renewed determination, Rachel and Daniel drafted a proposal outlining their plan. They reached out. 2 influential figures, scientists, activists, politicians hoping to gain support. To their surprise, many agreed to help. Even General Hayes, initially skeptical, saw merit in the idea. If nothing else, he told his team during a briefing, "It buys us time. And right now, time is the most valuable thing we have." The coalition worked tirelessly to coordinate the ceasefire, using every channel available to spread the message. Social media campaigns went viral. Religious leaders endorsed the initiative, and news outlets broadcast appeals for calm. Slowly but surely, momentum built. By the end of the week, over half the world's nations had pledged to participate. On the designated day, the world held its breath. Streets once filled with rioters stood eerily quiet. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Protesters put down their signs, and ordinary citizens paused to reflect on what it meant to truly coexist. For 24 hours, humanity dared to imagine a future without division. The Varnak observed silently, their ship pulsing faintly as if responding to Earth's shift in energy. Kelthar did not comment, nor did he issue new questions. Instead, the aliens seemed to wait, watching, analyzing. Judging, Rachel and Daniel spent the day monitoring reactions from their makeshift headquarters. Reports poured in from every corner of the globe, detailing acts of compassion and cooperation. In Africa, tribes long divided came together to share water during a drought. In Asia, nations exchanged gifts instead of threats. Even in conflict zones, temporary truces allowed families to reunite and communities to heal. "It's beautiful," Rachel murmured, tears streaming down her face as she read story after story. "This is who we can be." Daniel smiled softly. "Let's hope the Varnak see it too." But not everyone supported the ceasefire. Rogue factions refused to stand down, launching attacks they claimed would force the aliens to intervene. Response: General Hayes deployed troops to contain the outbreaks, ensuring they didn't derail the fragile peace. As night fell, the Varnak ship emitted another burst of energy, this time accompanied by Kelthar's voice. His tone was measured but firm. "You have shown potential," he announced. "But potential alone is not enough. Your actions must align with your intentions." Rachel felt a surge of hope, mixed with dread. Had humanity passed the test or merely delayed its failure? She looked at Daniel, searching for reassurance. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. But whatever comes next, we'll face it together." End of document. ***Document. Part 6 of They Asked Humans the Wrong Question. and paid for it in explosions. The aftermath of the global ceasefire left Earth suspended in a fragile calm, like a storm that had momentarily paused before unleashing its full fury. For 24 hours, humanity had held its breath, daring to believe that peace was possible. But as the clock ticked past midnight, signaling the end of the truce, tensions began creeping back into society. Old grievances resurfaced, and fear whispered louder than hope. Rachel Monroe sat alone in her apartment, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. News outlets reported mixed reactions to the ceasefire. Some praised it as a turning point, proof that humanity could rise above its flaws. Others dismissed it as meaningless theater, arguing that one day of peace couldn't erase centuries of conflict. Rachel scrolled through social media feeds filled with both gratitude and cynicism, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Daniel Harper called her late that night, his voice low and urgent. "Rachel, we have a problem." "What is it?" she asked, sitting up straighter. "Those rogue factions, the ones who refuse to honor the ceasefire, they're escalating. Attacks are spreading faster than Hayes' team can contain them. If this keeps up, the Varnock might see it as a failure." Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. "We knew there'd be resistance. But if the aliens interpret these outbreaks as representative of all humanity, they'll decide we're not worth saving," Daniel finished grimly. "We need to act fast. Maybe amplify the positive stories. Show the Varnock that most people want peace." Rachel nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I'll reach out to Emily Dawson. She's been covering the grassroots movements better than anyone. We can use her platform to highlight the good stuff." While Rachel worked on rallying support, General Stephen Hayes faced mounting pressure from military leaders around the world. His decision to prioritize containment over retaliation had drawn criticism, especially from nations targeted by rogue attacks. In a secure video conference, generals argued heatedly about whether to launch preemptive strikes against hostile groups, or even the Varnock themselves. Hayes slammed his fist on the table, silencing the room. "If we escalate now, we risk losing everything. The Varnock aren't just watching, they're judging. Every move we make counts." Lieutenant Linda Carter stood beside him, holding a tablet displaying updated intel. Sir, there's something else. Energy readings near the ship are spiking again. Whatever they're planning, it's close." Hayes clenched his jaw. "Then we don't have time for infighting. Focus on containing the outbreaks. Let me worry about the aliens." Meanwhile, journalist Emily Dawson traveled to Los Angeles to document a remarkable story. A group of activists had organized a massive art installation in Griffith Park, featuring thousands of paper cranes strung together to form the words, "We are one." Volunteers from diverse backgrounds worked side by side, folding paper and sharing meals. Emily interviewed participants, capturing their voices on camera. "This isn't just about the Varnock," said Maria Lopez, a young mother helping with the project. "It's about showing each other and ourselves that we're better than hatred and division." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat as she filmed the scene. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was trying, and maybe that was enough. Back in Chicago, Rachel and Daniel collaborated with Emily to spread the message of unity. Social media campaigns highlighted stories of cooperation, from farmers sharing crops with neighbors to musicians performing free concerts in war-torn cities. Hashtags like #OneEarth and #Choose Peace trended worldwide, inspiring millions to join the movement. But not everyone was swayed. In New York City, protests reignited as rival factions clashed over differing visions of the future. One side argued that diplomacy would save humanity. The other insisted only strength could ensure survival. Police struggled to maintain order. As tear gas filled the air and fires burned in the streets, Rachel watched footage of the chaos unfold, her hands trembling. "We're running out of time," she whispered. "If the Varnock see this, they'll think we're beyond redemption." Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we double down. Show them the best of us, not the worst." As the coalition intensified its efforts, strange phenomena began occurring near the Varnock ship. Pilots reported seeing swirling patterns of light beneath the craft, accompanied by gravitational anomalies that made navigation impossible. Scientists speculated the aliens were constructing some kind of device, a judgment tool, perhaps, or a weapon. General Hayes monitored the situation closely, his instincts screaming that the aliens were preparing for a final verdict. Reconnaissance. Missions revealed structures forming deep underwater, glowing faintly like veins of molten gold. Energy readings surged erratically, causing equipment malfunctions and bizarre weather patterns. "They're building something big," Hayes muttered. During a briefing, "And whatever it is, it's almost ready." Lieutenant Carter nodded grimly. "Should we prepare evacuation protocols?" "No," Hayes replied sharply. "If the Varnock wanted to wipe us out, they'd have done it already. This is different. More calculated." Rachel and Daniel worked tirelessly to decode the aliens' intentions, analyzing every detail of their behavior. They noticed subtle changes in Kelthar's tone when addressing humanity, alternating between approval and disappointment, as if weighing the species' potential versus its flaws. "It's like they're unsure," Rachel said during a late-night brainstorming session. "Maybe they haven't made up their minds yet, which means we still have a chance," Daniel added. "But how do we tip the scales in our favor?" Rachel hesitated, then spoke firmly. "We focus on what makes us human, not just our capacity for destruction, but our ability to create, to connect, to dream. If we can show them that, maybe they'll give us another shot." With renewed determination, Coalition launched its boldest initiative yet, a global broadcast titled The Heart of Humanity. Featuring stories of resilience, compassion, and innovation, the program aimed to present a unified image of Earth's potential. Artists, scientists, spiritual leaders, and everyday citizens shared their hopes for the future, urging the Varnock to reconsider their assessment. The broadcast aired simultaneously across continents, reaching billions of viewers. In living rooms, schools, and public squares, people gathered to watch, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and anticipation. As images of kindness and creativity filled the screen, tears flowed freely. For a brief moment, humanity felt united not by fear, but by hope. Kelthor observed silently, his glowing eyes fixed on Earth. The Varnock ship pulsed faintly, its surface shimmering with intricate patterns resembling circuits or veins. Observers noted increased activity beneath the craft, suggesting the aliens were processing the information humanity had provided. Rachel and Daniel waited anxiously for a response. Hours passed, then days. The world held its breath, unsure whether the effort had been enough. Finally, Kelthar's voice returned, resonating in minds around the globe. His tone was measured but firm. "You have shown glimpses of greatness," he announced, "but greatness must be sustained. Your actions will determine your fate." For a moment, there was silence. Then the ground trembled as the Varnock ship unleashed another burst of energy, lighting up the sky. Panic spread as people braced for the worst. But this time, the pulse felt different. Instead of fear, it carried a sense of waiting. Rachel grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel. "This isn't over," she said, her voice trembling with determination. "Whatever happens next, we can't give up." Daniel took a deep breath, agreed. "Let's keep fighting for ourselves and for everyone who believes in a better future." End of document.